Hey guys, what's happening? Niyat here with Film Comics Explained, and is voted for by you guys in last week's poll. Today, we're going to be breaking down Zack Snyder's Justice League, going over the story and main changes that were made. As I'm sure you're all aware, Zack Snyder, the original director of Justice League, stepped aside from the making of the film while it was in the final stages after the tragic death of his daughter. Warner Brothers then hired Joss Whedon to finish the project off, who replaced his vision with a version of Justice League that doesn't understand the core dynamics of the DC universe, the tone of the DCEU, or how to look like anything other than a TV movie. Justice League was so disappointing and so far from his vision that Snyder's good friends, including Christopher Nolan and his wife, forced him never to see it, as this would have only compounded the pain he already felt. After years of petitioning from fans, the cast, and Snyder himself, with the rally cry #release the Snyder Cut, it was announced that the director would finally be releasing his version of the film, and last month, that became a reality. The Snyder Cut of Justice League is night and day to that of Whedon's, filled with Snyder's unique visual style and mastery of slow-motion, almost balletic action sequences, but without compromising character depth and narrative clarity. It's clear that his version, divided into 6 chapters and an epilogue, is all Snyder, uncut and uncompromised, and while the storylines between the two movies are similar on paper, they couldn't feel any more different.
Why are you looking for me, Diana?
But whatever happened to you, you have gifts now.
Gifts? What part of this looks like a gift to you?
Additions are sparse, but changes in the removal of all the scenes filmed by Whedon to be replaced by Snyder's original sequences add up to a film that's cohesively streets ahead of the original. All the Justice League members are given a boost to their screen time and development, making them feel more rounded and important to the story, and scenes that move by quicker than the Flash in the original version are finally given time to breathe. Where the original version favoured quirky characterizations and Marvel-esque levels of comedy, the Snyder Cut is serious in tone and fleshes out the characters' deep backstories. Even the music has been changed, with Snyder using musical compositions that have thematic resonance and signal the current state of our characters and the scene they're in, as opposed to Whedon's use of jukebox music to make everything look cool, regardless of the circumstances. But the first noticeable change from the original version comes in the controversial departure from a widescreen aspect ratio to an old-screen 4:3:1. While the change is initially jarring, you soon get used to it and begin to enjoy the full image it gives. Not only is this a more cohesive film with characters, narrative progression, color grading, and cuts that make sense, but its effective world building enables us to get a proper footing into the DCEU. The Snyder Cut's 4-hour runtime allows the filmmaker to greatly expand on the plot of the theatrical version, which itself felt cursory and rushed. Though the central narrative is the same, the two cuts of the film differ wildly in tone, visuals, and pacing, and are to all intents and purposes completely different takes on the subject matter. In typical Snyder fashion, his scenes are framed and color graded to make it feel as though they've been taken right out of a graphic novel, unlike Whedon's version, which honestly had scenes that felt like a made-for-TV movie. Much more context is also provided to explain the main characters, the world they're in, the origins of the mother boxes, as well as to clarify the motivations of Steppenwolf and new addition Darkseid. The immediately noticeable changes are essentially amendments and corrections. Whedon's reshoots with Cavill, for instance, were rightfully ridiculed at the time for some incredibly bad CGI moustache removal. In the Snyder Cut, the plasticine chin is gone, and instead of an awkward interview between Superman and children that appear to grow several feet while asking him questions that have no bearing on the plot, the film begins by reinforcing the significance of Superman's death. We see the reverberations of Superman's final sonic screams travel across the planet in a haunting sequence, awakening the mother boxes, who, up until that point, had stayed quiet out of fear for his ability to destroy them. This, of course, attracts the big bad Steppenwolf, one of Darkseid's former servants to Earth. While in Justice League, Steppenwolf looked constipated and his motivation seesawed between not having one to wanting to see his mother. Mother. He gets a major visual upgrade here, making him look more imposing. It's also explained that he'd fallen out of favor with Darkseid and aimed to regain it by gathering the boxes to form the Unity and terraforming Earth in the likeness of Darkseid's world, Apocalypse. The dynamic between Steppenwolf as the cast-out child and Darkseid as the malevolent master adds an extra dimension to the film that was sorely missing from the original cut. This leads into the discovery that Darkseid, not seen in the original cut, and his legions of parademons were the ones that attempted to conquer Earth using the mother boxes thousands of years ago, after discovering the planet was home to the anti-life equation, which is a transcendental mathematical formula that obliterates free will, allowing the mathematician calculating the result to completely dominate the will of any sentient race. The addition of Darkseid and his super objective of getting the anti-life equation increases the overall stakes, introduces us to a larger universe beyond what we'd seen, whilst also giving the film direction beyond this film's narrative. Snyder takes his time to develop character backstories that the Whedon cut glossed over or turned into comedy sketches. As mentioned before, the greatest beneficiaries are Cyborg and the Flash, neither of whom made much of an impression previously and now become the heart of the Snyder Cut. In Justice League, Victor is a teenager who transforms into a human-robot hybrid with very little reason or fanfare. We don't learn all that much about him as a person, and his powers are poorly defined and seemingly insignificant compared to everyone else's. But in the Snyder Cut, we see him lose his mother in a fatal accident and get more context to his misplaced hatred for his father, Silas Stone, who used one of the mother boxes to turn Victor into Cyborg to save his life. Snyder's version also establishes Cyborg as immensely powerful, with the ability to hack into any system, even an extraterrestrial one, which makes him the only person who can get inside the mother boxes and prevent them from terraforming the planet. These changes pay off at the end of the second act, with his father's sacrifice offering the film an emotional anchor that just wasn't in the Whedon cut. We also thankfully get an alternate introduction to the Flash, with a moment where he uses his super speed to save his future wife from a traffic accident. This is in stark contrast to the Whedon cut, where we first meet the Flash heroically drawing pictures on a guy's face. Snyder's Batman is similarly redeemed from being driven by violence and paranoia in Batman v Superman to being an empathetic hero again.
You fixed it. Flight is its nature. Yours too.
He's the leader of the group in a way that he never was in Justice League, and it's no accident that the film ends with him welcoming Martian Manhunter to the League, enabling him to come full circle from his distempered distrust of aliens in the past. Snyder's portrayal of Superman is not only far superior to Justice League, but it highlights how pointless the reshoots made by Whedon were. The reshoots were carried out to add humour, pick up pacing, and move away from the darker interpretation of Superman we'd seen up until that point, but they come at a cost. Whedon's cut trifles pacing, truncates plot points, waters down the significance of characters we're supposed to be invested in, and eviscerates plot threads Snyder had devoted nearly a decade of his life cultivating. The Superman we get in Snyder's cut is optimistic, yet uncompromising, emerging from the grave and benefiting from years of experience and mistakes. He pulls through in the end, but as Snyder has tried to reinforce with Batman's motivation for wanting to kill Superman in the previous film, as good as he is susceptible to corruption, and had Lois not arrived in time, he would most certainly have killed Batman and the other League members without breaking a sweat. The significance of the black suit could not be clearer. He's back, but he's not the same. Wonder Woman also gets a more vital role in the formation of the League. We see her interpret the warning sent by the Amazonians, research the history of the Age of Heroes, and support Batman in uniting the Six to stop the apocalypse, without all the unnecessary crutch shots that Whedon decided to throw in. And while Aquaman clearly had no love for his Atlantean roots in both cuts, Snyder shows the way to the sea, constantly calling on him to fulfill his destiny. The addition of Volko spurring Arthur to pick up his mother's trident and defend the mother box also provides further context for why he chooses to help, despite feeling like an outcast in both worlds. While the film is admittedly much longer than it needs to be, Snyder showcases his understanding of who the characters are, what drives them, and how they structurally fit into the narrative, and does a heck of a great job effectively communicating that to the audience, making us more connected to the story. A great moment that exemplifies the lack of functionality and purpose in Whedon's version is when Aquaman, at a low point in life, chugs down a bottle of whiskey and struts into the sea to Icky Thump, which had no bearing on characterization, setting, or tone. In Snyder's cut, the same moment now strikes a somber note, supported by a melancholy Nick Cave ballad that complements Arthur's mental state. Similarly, in the Whedon cut, a scene where Martha and Lois are discussing how they're coping with Clark's death is riddled with jokes.
He said that you were the thirstiest young woman he ever met. Hungriest.
Yeah.
Lit with no thematic intention, and bears no importance in setting tone or driving the story forward, whereas the Snyder Cut has them framed in shadow, reflecting not only the pain they both feel at having lost someone they loved, but also the weight of the secret that they keep.
I lost the farm.
Well, you know you're welcome to stay here. Any time for as long as you need.
The whole world is mourning. Grieving over a symbol. But they didn't know Clark.
Thankfully, The Flash no longer jokes about brunch, and Superman, back from the dead, no longer jokes about his coffin itching. Also gone is a ridiculous early sequence in which Batman strings up Bill Tench from Mindhunters to entice an alien out of hiding, as well as Flash falling on top of Wonder Woman with his face in her bosom, and a later painfully unfunny scene in which Aquaman, inadvertently sitting on the lasso of truth, begins to share his feelings. By removing these moments, the Snyder Cut feels more tonally consistent. What's more, what I found surprising is that the Snyder Cut actually injects more nuanced humour into this cut than expected, but the difference is that his use of comedy doesn't take away from the seriousness of what's at stake, or come at the cost of story or characters.
He's never fought us. Not us united.
The end is a great example of how Snyder's focus on functionality and purpose pays off in creating a more consistent film and unified team. The refined finale in Russia avoids the slapstick nature of the Whedon cut,
Dostoevsky!
and leans into the emotional undercurrent threaded throughout the movie. Each of the heroes is shown to be an essential part of the mission. They still battle Steppenwolf inside a nuclear reactor, but instead of the Flash being relegated to a passive role saving civilians, he now must travel dangerous speeds to allow Cyborg to merge with, confront, and separate the mother boxes. And instead of Steppenwolf simply being pummeled by the newly resuscitated Superman before being carried off to obscurity by parademons, the villain's plan momentarily succeeds here, leaving it up to the Flash to reverse time by traveling faster than the speed of light. By the end, it's clear the Justice League couldn't carry out the mission without Superman, but what the Snyder Cut appropriately shows us is that Superman also couldn't save the world without the rest of the League members. Unsurprisingly, the end of the action doesn't signal the end of the film, with the additional scenes tying up loose ends and setting up future installments. But it's in the final scenes of the film that we get the biggest glimpse of where Snyder wanted to take the series, as Bruce Wayne dreams about an Earth that has come to ruin, with almost everybody having been killed or turned into one of Darkseid's parademons. This nightmare sequence is essentially a lengthy conflict based on the Injustice graphic novels, Darkseid War and New Gods, that occurs in a possible future in which Batman's insurgency fights to overthrow Superman's regime.
She's the key!
As has been foreshadowed, the death of Lois Lane leaves Superman susceptible to the anti-life equation, leading to him allying himself with the forces of Darkseid and becoming the tyrannical ruler of Earth. We see Batman and a motley crew featuring Cyborg, Flash, Joker, Deathstroke and Mira roam the apocalyptic landscape, trying to avoid detection, only to have Superman, now a servant of Darkseid, appear with an evil glint in his eye. Truth be told, these new endings are a lot to take in, coming at the end of an already long film, but the plot threads of insane future installments are sewed. The Snyder Cut isn't perfect, and while we may never see this potential future come to fruition, I'm so glad that we got the chance to see the film that Snyder wanted to make.